And welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly Star Trek show that helps us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. Hi everyone, I am Dr. Ali Mattu. Who are you? Do you know who you're? We will always leave that for you to decide. Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about reconciliation. For those of you who are frequent watchers, we took last week off in observance of American Thanksgiving, give ourselves a little bit of a break. So it's been a little bit of a week. So we're actually catching up on 2 weeks episodes of Star Trek Discovery. We use those as inspiration for every week. And actually, the last 2 episodes, Larry, they both had a theme of reconciliation. So we'll get into that in a moment. So let us know in the comments right now, what's your favorite Star Trek story about reconciliation? But before we get to that, Larry, this is... No, we had... Well, we did. Bugakubi is asking, is this live on Twitch? Yeah, you bet. We are live, for better and worse. Before we get into this week's episode, Larry, if this is someone's first time here, what do we do on Life Support Live? Remind me, first and foremost. Oh.
Doing it through a mental health lens, and not to be scary about it at all. There's so much we can just benefit from in our daily lives. And, we're already benefiting from Star Trek in our daily lives. We're just maybe quantifying a little bit, throwing a few fancy buzzwords, courtesy this guy, at it. But no, we're here every week. This time we're global. We've got friends from across the pond both ways with us. We have a wonderful community. So if you are new, welcome. And all of our prior shows are posted on where you're watching now, YouTube or Facebook. You can go look at the archives on my channels and find the past shows too. So welcome. And yes, while we have Fresh Trek, not to be confused with Fresh Hell, which was a Brett Spiner show, while we have Fresh Trek, we're taking our inspiration weekly from the theme of the last episode, last 2 this time. And when we're out of Fresh Trek, we will return to looking at different themes across all of Star Trek, though, not just for whatever the recent show was.
Right. I'm impressed, Larry. We've been able to keep this going as long as we have in terms of taking inspiration from each week's episode.
I've been faking it. Don't tell anybody.
Last week, we had Star Trek Discovery Episode 6, Unification 3. And it was pretty clear we could talk about reconciliation from that week's episode. And boy, was there a lot in that episode we wanted to talk about. And then this week we had Star Trek Discovery Episode 7, which I forget the title of that.
People are saying they can't hear me.
Now I fixed it. Turns out you have to unmute your co-host. I'm learning.
So we're even.
We're even.
I have a camera button. You have an audio button. Okay.
It's only taken us 33 episodes, but we're figuring these things out. Yeah. For those of you who might not remember, what episode was it, Larry, that you didn't press the video button?
What was it? Yeah, the week before. Was it
Was it First Contact?
Was
or
it First Contact? Yeah.
Yeah. We lost Larry's video for a while, and it turned out it's because he did turn it on.
Well, we had a restart. And I assumed, yeah.
Right,
Yes.
right. And today, for some reason, I muted Larry, and I've unmuted him. So, yes,
As
this week's
Daffy
episode.
Duck once said, always push the red button. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, folks, let us know, what's your favorite episode about reconciliation? As Larry and I saw this week's episode of Discovery, last week's episode of Discovery, both had a theme about different parties who had grievances and coming together and overcoming those problems that they had. Larry, before we get into that, we're going to share a little bit more spoilers about last week's episode of Star Trek Discovery because we have to. There's a lot to talk about there, but we're not going to give away everything, but the premise a little bit.
If you want a breakdown of the entire Bloomin' show, there's a whole internet out there with 47 other shows that will gladly do that for you, and a couple of them are actually friends of mine, so maybe even 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's why we this Life Support Live isn't about all of that, and that's why we don't do the breakdown episode by episode. But we're gonna get some hot takes. Larry, I'd like your hot takes on these last couple episodes of Discovery. What's your take? Sizzling hot.
Sizzling. Well, both of them, taken together. I mean, I think a Unification 3 that everybody saw coming a mile away a year and a half ago when they saw the title would be about Vulcans, and maybe Vulcans and Romulans. And it did not fail to deliver that. So, which was all about reconciliation. But that was the easy part of it. And just broad strokes, since we're talking about 2 episodes, this week was unraveling some more of the Byrne mystery and all this, but it was the book backstory show where, you have I loved it when you have a brother? I wanted to go, yeah, but his only got revealed after about 5 episodes.
Everyone in Star Trek has a long-lost sibling somewhere.
He ain't heavy. He's my long-lost brother. There are a lot of story threads going on here. There's some mystery arcs and all that. But yeah, the reconciliation theme plays out. Now, as I got into this thinking, we can, again, like some of these topics, we can talk about the micro, like between individuals, like we had Book and his brother reconciling. And we've had so many other characters across Star Trek do that. And we've got like cultural and political reconciliations too.
Yes.
So
yes.
You're talking about Vulcans and Romulans. But both of these cases, and we've got pictures here to show you in case you don't believe us. But we read the story, point to the picture. We've got individuals with a cultural agency too, like there's the brothers. Okay, from The Sanctuary. Now here's my new rule.
Yes.
If you're confused on an episode title, if it has V in it, it's not DS9. If it doesn't have V in it, like if you have Emissary, that's DS9. If it's The Emissary, that's TNG. If you have The Sanctuary, that's Discovery. If it's just Sanctuary, that's DS9. See, there's a pattern to this. Do you get it?
This makes sense. There is a method to the madness here.
I don't get a lot done, but that's what I do get done at 1 a.m. But what I'm saying here is there's a lot of reconciling, and there's our Vulcans and our Romulans. And as I loved my favorite adjective of all Discovery is the Romulo-Vulcan neighborhoods. To see it in the captions, the Romulo-Vulcan, and one of your Romulo-Vulcan sections. But also, there's one there of Ren, the android. This is the part that we think about, governments and cultures reconciling. We think about people reconciling. But I was struck by how both of these episodes had an individual and a larger agency. And I felt like at the end of The Sanctuary, that Ren was, his personal it was part of propaganda, but it was his personal reconciliation with the Federation as seen through, he even gives up a little bit of information for the story arc of the season. But I did it that way just to kind of talk about how, he started off, even though they'd rescued him and all that he was traumatized, or he was raised in an atmosphere to distrust which is a total anathema to our 23rd centurions there. But that's the whole point of the arc this season, is the landscape is so different. But it's possible for a single person to have reconciliation with a bigger agency. It may be fronted by individuals. But that struck me. I mean, I don't know how valid that is in your eyes, but
I think that's 100% valid. And what I didn't pick up on that theme until you mentioned it in our prep. And
You're welcome.
You're welcome for our Moana fans, because that is all we watch at home. We watch like the same 5 musicals over and over. Because that's life with a preschooler. The Rin storyline is really great, because it does highlight many aspects of reconciliation. That there have been certain people who have more power and have probably wronged another group of people for many complex reasons. And there are people who might be more in the victim role. And how do we bring these parties together in different ways? And with Rin, I think you see the complexity of that. That there's aspects to it related to the Federation. There's aspects to his actions and what he took. And it's complicated. And we see that coming together. We see it between Book and his brother. We see it with Michael and her mom. We see it with the Romulans and the Vulcans. And Larry, what happened to the Remans? What are they part of this new?
Well, now there's an oddity thing. There's a debate going on. That trailer image, spoiler here. There's a trailer that shows a conjured up David Cronenberg is back next week. This was in the trailer, so it's a spoiler only if you haven't seen it. Wait, does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, sure. No, I haven't seen this. Hit me.
No, it was a trailer, and there's a blooper in it, and then there's somebody standing there in an early first 2 seasons Next Generation, so a pre 2266, the original spandex uniforms.
Yes.
They've recreated one, and they've got
with the extra line here.
The extra line.
Yes.
With the zipper down the front.
Yes, yeah.
And the boat neck kind of
the real tight ones that really gave him a lot of back problems.
Right, and they were replaced by Bob Blackman's design. Anyway,
yes,
they've got an alien that they've brought back. I love how they're going down the checklist of we used them once, but we never did again because they were a horrible mask. Aliens from motion picture that got all this publicity, and then you saw them in the background of the tram station at San Francisco in the motion picture. That's what Linus is, a Saurian. We've had Saurian brandy since day one, but they finally showed you a Saurian and they never did it again. But now they've resurrected that. The Trit or whatever, the courier that was after Book in the first episode, he was a Betelgeusian. They'd even a
Betelgeusian?
A Betelgeusian, yeah.
Betelgeusian.
Well, you love to see Betelgeusian, but anyway, just don't say it 3 times.
Yeah. Otherwise, Q appears.
Yes, or something. But there's
whoosh.
Keep talking, or you keep going on. There was another one of those wacky aliens from motion picture was a Betelgeusian in civilian and on the crew. So they've brought that back. So some people are thinking that's a Betelgeusian that they've conjured up in that uniform, which totally would fit. And he has this rib thing that looks almost like a Vadwar from Voyager, from Delta Quadrant. But the face is so similar, it almost looks like it's a Reman, but the Remans didn't have the collar, so I guess it is a Betelgeusian. This whole thing started off with you talking about Remans. People are all wondering about the Remans. Were they wiped out in the supernova? Are we just not talking? I want just to go in a cave sometime and find some Remans just to shut everybody up. But anyway.
We had a whole movie about them. We had a whole movie about them. Can we have a little bit more Reman love? Okay, but I want to give my hot take here, Larry. And the comment.
They were Enterprise too.
The Remans were in Enterprise.
You saw too the Romulan that was posing as the Velas in the trilogy in the Babel United One trilogy, where they're masquerading as Marauders, but it's really Romulans. Velas is escorted by 2 Remans.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I do remember that. I do remember seeing. I've got.
This is one of my best trivia questions over time. Yeah. Did you
for
ever see
for
Remans beyond Nemesis? And
Yeah, I do remember that because for some reason there's a soft spot in my heart for the Remans, and I'd like to see more of them. The comment section's blowing up with so many examples of reconciliation, and I want to dive into that. But before that, I want to give my hot take. Larry, I loved last week's episode of Star Trek Discovery so much. I mean, we heard this in the
most
comments.
Recent?
Last week's episode 6, Unification 3. And there was so much happening in that week's episode. We saw it in the comments section, people getting really emotional seeing Leonard Nimoy again and Leonard Nimoy Spock again. And I will argue with anyone about this. Leonard Nimoy Spock is the most important character in all of Star Trek. I think he has appeared in. He has had his footprints over every era, every version of Star Trek now. But to see this storyline that was started decades ago now continue, and to see that unification happened, it's worked. Mm-hmm. The Romulans and the Vulcans have reconciled.
But it's there, right? It was more than it was.
Yeah, and the name of the planet, Navara, is that right? What's the name of the planet? What is Vulcan now known as?
Navasa? No, I've gone blank. Not Navarre. Navarre.
Navarre. Yeah. Tim is saying Unification 3 was the finest Star Trek Discovery episode to date. I really love this episode for what it did for the Vulcan Romulan storyline and to push these things forward. And it's really, to me, delivering on the promise of what happens when you go so far into the future, that you can take the storyline into all these different directions. That's just not possible in something like Star Trek Picard. We're not going to get reconciliation between the Romulans and the Vulcans in Star Trek Picard. They're still dealing with all the after effects of the supernova. So Jared and Scott, Navarre is everyone at like the exact same time.
No.
Is letting us know. So I really love this episode, and I love I love this idea of, how did they get here? What did they do? And what's the difficulty in maintaining this? And we talked in a few episodes back, I don't want to dive into the counselor's log already, but we talked a few episodes back about how sometimes when you do have conflict over decades and decades and decades, and it seems intractable, sometimes you need an external force, some type of crisis to shake the parties loose a little bit. We saw that in Star Trek VI.
I was just about to say, you mean like Praxis?
Yes. Yes, like Praxis. We see that in Star Trek VI. And now we see that with the Vulcans and Romulans. It was probably the destruction of their home world and everything Spock was doing behind the scenes that has led us to this point. The way that they view Spock, that's what I thought, what was so emotional to me. They view Leonard Nimoy Spock in canon, in Star Trek Discovery, in the 32nd century, in the same way we do.
Still.
Yeah, still. Yes.
Well, if you stop and think about it, you're talking about on a, I don't know, Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Kalis, Surak kind of level.
I think Spock,
to pull a Star Trek blending of real history and future.
I think Spock and Surak are neck and neck here.
But I mean, if you're still revering someone a millennia after they're gone,
yes,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Even though they have their bumps and their bumps and grinds, even though they've obviously still got things to work out, they're at least all there on the same page talking, which was a hell of a lot further along.
Yeah, and they're on the same planet.
Yeah.
And they're talking on the same planet. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of episodes for us to explore. The comments section has brought up so many as well. A lot of small little examples that you and I, like character moments that you and I haven't considered. Larry, where we talked about, I just alluded to Star Trek Six right now, but that's a pretty strong parallel. Where
Well, and
else?
six, I think about as again, some of these are on like big unit levels, and a lot of things are on the personal level, and that was obviously a big unit, Klingons and the Federation cultures. But the one, and I started to say it was Star Trek 4, but there was a little bit, actually the breakthrough was in Journey to Babel, but Spock and his father Sarek. You want to talk
Yes.
about a personal reconciliation? This is a great dramatic moment, although they technically kind of reconciled before that. They still didn't talk much because they're goofy Vulcans from the Sarek family. But
Yeah,
that's a huge.
Steve.
I think that may have been the biggest. I was trying to think of an original series reconciliation that way, and then finally later on it was like, well, duh, Spock and Sarek at least.
Steve Price mentioned that. Not an episode, but a favorite
Hi,
scene:
Steve.
the reconciliation between Spock and Sarek at the end of Star Trek Four. It's a beautiful moment. Uh,
So
why?
Vulcan. And hi,
It's
Steve.
so.
If you're a first timer, I'm not sure, but maybe. Okay.
Yeah, it's very Vulcan, like, say hi to your mother for me. Why do you think that happens? Why why that reconciliation at that moment between these characters?
Well, like I said, I think really the reconciliation started at the beginning. The breakthrough was at the end of Journey to Babel, really. And again, it's like, it's a trauma. It's like, well, your planet didn't blow up, but your heart almost did. I mean, in the case of Sarek, and then here's Spock has to jump in and save, the only one that can do it is he has the blood to give him a transfusion for his heart attack. And they both have to get over themselves, especially Sarek. And that's
Yeah.
I want to say as much of a, whatever you want to say about the shaky first season of Discovery, and it had its moments. To me, the most watching it for the first time, the moment I will always remember, just like when yesterday's Enterprise was unwinding, and I thought, oh my God, the Next Generation has finally found itself and stepped up here to being as epic as a motion picture, or the old motion pictures. That moment for me in Discovery was when the whole subterfuge, all the flashbacks about all the manipulation Sarek was doing with Michael about the Vulcan Science Academy, knowing what was going on. He pulled her out to get Spock in there. He played favorites and made choices, and then Spock turned him down, so he wound up with none of his kids at the Vulcan Science Academy. Like cruel fate and karma and irony and all that. And I was like, oh my God, they've actually added a layer of texture here that didn't exist before, that makes you go back and revisit an earlier episode made earlier in time, and you see it through whole new eyes. It's like a double tragedy for Sarek and a double lesson to, stop. Mr. Ambassador, who brings warring peoples together, can't handle his own, family management.
Yeah, there's Charlotte has a great point here. Even Sarek admits at the end of Star Trek 3 that his logic is not always sound where his son is concerned. And I think
bitter experience they're talking in a Vulcan way, in a Vulcan term.
Yeah, there's an acceptance that's coming there that I think is also a part of this reconciliation of your own mistakes, and a little bit of forgiving yourself in that moment that maybe allows for more of that reconciliation to occur. And Jesse says, then Spock getting to touch a sliver of Sarek by mind melding with Picard in the Next Generation's Unification part 2, I think is where that meld happens.
After Picard had mind melded with Sarek.
Yeah.
In Sarek.
Yep. And speaking of Picard, Larry, here's another example that you brought up that I also forgot about. If I'm able to,
somebody else, and I'm forgiving me, guys. Somebody else brought this up way early. Maybe I can.
Here we go.
I know what you're going to say.
There's
the series Picard. I thought you were talking about Next Gen image.
There's that too. Yeah, we'll get into that. But there's
Oh,
there's
there's
a
that.
lot of reconciliation that has to happen in Star Trek Picard as well, with Rafi and Jean-Luc, and then with Rafi and her son. That's a reconciliation that does not occur.
Right. I mean,
But
that made me think that sometimes reconciliations misfire, or they miss the,
yes, or
they
you have
have
a
not.
false reconciliation that
Mhm.
on paper looks like the parties are coming together, but it's not quite the case. Um, you get the impression here that Jean-Luc is trying to apologize, um, and
Mhm.
not quite getting there. It's not a complete empty because Rafi does sort of come along with him. But she has her own reasons for coming on this mission, as we find out, which is,
Initially,
yeah,
right.
initially. So I think we see here that Rafi has been struggling, and Picard hasn't really been there to help her in this moment. So it's a reconciliation that doesn't quite get to warp speed.
Well, and to Rafi's point, she's angry because he comes calling when he needs something for the first time in
Yes,
14 years.
yes,
So,
yes.
it's and it
Oh, it's so good to hear from you. What's up? Oh, you need a starship.
and
Okay.
and an off the books captain and
Yeah.
okay.
By the
And then
way, I
later
know
on I'm going
this
to
is
need you
not
to
how
wreck an old
communicators work, but
yeah. And
yeah.
then later on I'm going to need you to wreck one of your few surviving Starfleet friendships too for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
How much wreckage can you leave behind? Um no, I was going to say boy, it just hit. Okay, whoosh! Did you see that happen? Um, it's not only that Raffi is angry at Picard and hurt because she senses that he's only come back to reconcile because he needs something now. Oh, I had this. It doesn't matter that his reason for not reconciling and causing this rift also was the fact that he himself was hurt. I mean, he
Yes.
withdrew in his pain and whatever and all to hell with him, and she didn't care. It was a domino effect, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people are getting hurt here by an initial incident, and the dominoes falling on different people.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
didn't help her to know that he had gotten screwed, and that's why he was like ignoring her. She just cared about their situation,
Yeah. Yeah.
which happens.
I
That's part of the messiness of of stuff not going well.
Yeah, speaking of not going well, I just saw Tim's comment about reconciliation between Spock and Cybok.
Mm.
Do you think they reconcile?
It was so fast. I
It
just
was so
realized we never got to hear Sarek or any parental units talk about Cybok. No one else
No, and we never
seems to
have.
talk about Cybok from the family, but one of these days I want Michael to say something.
Yes,
about
that's what
Cybok.
I was gonna say. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I would love for Michael to be like, "Oh yeah, Cybok. Yeah, we don't talk about him in like a in a Worf kind of way, in a Worf trials and tribulations kind of
I
way. We
had
don't
this
talk
like
about it
foster
without Cybok.
stepbrother that like he came back and lived with us for a year when I was a kid because he was kind of weird and nobody ever.
Loved wearing these white robes. Speaking of Worf,
He came
let's
back to town, but mom and dad wouldn't let him live in the house. So,
speaking of Worf, let's talk
yeah.
about sins of our father. This is where you thought I was headed earlier, right?
Nope. Actually,
No?
nope.
Okay.
But it's
Okay.
what I
Well,
sent you. I sent an image, so.
yeah, I have it then. I just am not
Wait,
I'm
let's
not
talk
thinking.
about Worf.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. It's a little trip to France is where you want to go. But there's many examples of Worf here. Zahir mentions Worf and Nikolai on Boral too. And there's Worf in many ways reconciliation in relation to the Klingon Empire. So
Right.
this I'll get into
And
this
the
in a
Klingon Empire in relation to Worf.
yes. Well, tell me about that, Larry. Let's dive into it.
The Worf saga?
Yes. Let's dive into the Warp Saga.
Okay, so Moog, who is Worf's real life father, who
Yes.
was wiped out at Kittimer and his
Yep.
entire family, and then Kern pops up as the brother he never knew survived. So initially they find each other. Then Kern says, "You have to come back because they're about to blame the family that I'm not admitting to because I'm secretly not part of this. But the real bad guys, the House of Duras." And no one remembers what Duras's father was who started the family sin.
His name?
His name, yeah. Everybody just says the House of Duras. No one ever remembers that Duras's father started this.
Is it Bob? Bob Duras? I don't know.
Damn. I can't trick you today. Wow. No, it's Gerard. It's a
Gerard.
J. That's why no one wants to remember. It's a J Klingon name, which is weird. Anyway, so there's the real bad guys. There's the real corrupt house
Yeah.
who are pinning all this corruption on the reason for the Kittimer massacre 22 years later, or whatever it is, 23, 4. They're trying to pin it on Worf's dad, who was totally innocent. It was his dad.
Pin him as a traitor, right?
Pin him as a traitor that betrayed the colony to Romulans to attack when it was really his. Talk about projection. It was his father that did it, but they've covered that up. Worf comes back. They actually find...
Now, one of the reasons why they probably covered it up is they probably look the high
Council?
The High Council probably got together and said, well, Worf is out there, there's no other Moog here, and we got so many Duroses, and they're so influential. Let's pin it on him.
Right, exactly. We've got the sisters we don't even know we've got yet.
Yes.
So,
anyway.
And
now we have a weapon of unlimited power.
So Worf shows up and there's like, aha, okay, truth and honor, right? We're Klingons. And they're like, no, this is very inconvenient. We're all going to accommodate you because you're one guy. Meanwhile, his brother stays secretly his brother. Yeah. So it's all murky, but it's an arc that plays out. And eventually, Duras is up. Kimpek is poisoned, which, isn't very honorable, but hey, it's Klingon society. There's an outsider vying to be chancellor, and Duras is like the inside favorite, but they all know the secret. He can't be the emperor. The Klingons will be totally corrupt. And eventually Worf and Duras comes over to kill Kalar, Worf's old girlfriend, who he doesn't even know yet gave him a son until now. She's killed because she's going to expose it, and then Worf kills Duras. This is all in honorable Klingon combat, so it's all okay. And Worf kills Duras, and then Gowron gets to be the chancellor, even though Picard's his arbiter of succession and does all this. And but Gowron takes office badly harmed, and somewhere along the way, Kern, Worf's brother, comes out and says, "Okay, I was Worf's brother all along." And then there's a Klingon civil war because of the resulting wounds. And Duras has these two sisters that are just, I don't know. And they lead a faction against Gowron. And there's a Klingon civil war for a couple of years. And Picard steers the Federation into being not involved, but involved, just keeping the Romulans away because the Romulans are supporting the Duras sisters.
Yes.
And don't you just love a great political drama? Oh, wait, this is sci-fi.
Okay. And then the Duras sisters find the weapon of unlimited power, and but then they're killed, and then
but they get to be killed on a movie budget.
They get to be killed, kind of a movie budget.
It's
a bit of a stretch.
Explosion. One recycled.
And then there's a Klingon, there's a war with the Klingons, but it's really the Changelings' fault.
We have to retitle this to the Worf saga.
Yeah. Well, you know what I was thinking, Larry, as you were describing this image came to mind. It won't let me display it. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking of the image from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the guy and his map of like conspiracy kind of stuff. I'm gonna pull it. It's gonna be very small.
Well, you could pull up the Mariner one too.
Oh yeah. I could do the Mariner.
And you could keep it canon if you did that.
Yeah, no, I mean
keep
that would
it
have
in
been
the family.
That would have been smart, but I'm not. This is the image that was coming to mind as you're describing Worf and all of that sort of stuff.
Actually, my image was going to do Was it, dude? Where's my car? And then, and then, and then.
Oh my gosh. Well, this it actually does take Worf some time to come to terms with all of the stuff. I mean, he is willing to take all the discommodation, the dishonor for the sake of the
Mhm.
Klingon Empire, and it takes a while for all the reconciliations to happen until he's at this place where he's accepted back into a house, which we don't see until way later in Deep Space Nine. A lot of stuff needs to happen. A lot of forgiveness needs to happen. A lot of acceptance and ownership of the more dishonorable actions that have occurred need to happen. It's a messy process, and it takes a very long time to play out for Worf and for the Klingons.
Right. Well, and you just reminded me of that. It's Worf and his brother, but also Worf and the Empire and the whole culture and yeah. And there's a lot going on in the chat. We haven't been dipping into the chat much here, but
The Duras sisters are so much fun though, says Charlotte. I didn't appreciate the Duras sisters until I was an adult. When I was a kid, I think I was just so annoyed by them. I think I was annoyed by everyone who's not nice to Worf, which was a lot of Klingons.
I was going to say that's a long list. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a long list of people. I was like, be nice to him.
Be
He's like,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, he's doing his job. He likes prune juice. Like, chill out. He's a great warrior. Yeah, he's a good
He's a
guy.
great warrior. Yeah. But anyway, so back to, and I found out who it was who said it. I pulled the image last night, but Charlotte mentioned this also in the Next Gen family. Can you pull it up?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When you finally got it. Jean-Luc and his brother Robert, which is like an honest to God personal. They're like Sarek and Spock. They had not talked in a gazillion years, and then something happens traumatic to one of them, and
Yeah.
he feels the need to go home after the whole Locutus episode with the Borg, and yeah,
I love
and
that episode.
the mud fight's just one of those iconic moments.
Yeah. I love this moment in the mud fight as well because you can see like Patrick Stewart is smiling a little bit
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, this is after the hump. They're
Right.
starting to laugh about it now. Yeah.
Right. I really love this episode. I watching that episode for the first time. The feeling for me was, wow, like Jean-Luc is not perfect. He has made sacrifices to get to the place where he's at, and he's made some mistakes. And when it comes to his family, he's not he doesn't have all the answers. Yeah.
Right. He's not the bright shining knight in armor.
He'll kind of tuck his shirt. He can command the Enterprise, but when it comes to his brother, when it comes to his family, he struggles, and it's messy. And his brother, he has his own grievances with Jean-Luc, as well as Jean-Luc does with is it Robert?
It's Robert. And then
Robert.
Robert and Renee are killed in a fire. I still say it was a
and-
barn
and-
fire from an early draft, but anyway,
Yeah,
it was
in
a
Star
fire,
Trek
which is like,
Generations.
really, in the 23 whatevers? It's
Well,
yeah.
Larry, they say, time is the fire in which we burn.
No, only Tullian Saran says that.
I come to think
Only
of
him.
time
Yeah.
as a companion. Reminds us to cherish these moments, for they never will come again.
Yep. Wow, we actually had a couple people coming in from Twitch. I'm so sorry. I think we probably lost Buggy QB by now, but anyway, I'm glad.
If we haven't, awesome to have you here. But let's talk about that. So this is another example of reconciliation.
Oh.
There's a pressure on Jean-Luc. He's at Earth. He's gone through a very traumatic experience. He was assimilated by the Borg. He's responsible as a Borg, he's responsible as Locutus for the deaths of many, many Federation officers and citizens. Worf 359. Wolf 359. I'm sorry.
You're not the first to do that. It's okay.
Worf, many lives were lost at Wharf 359.
I
Great
can see the
songs.
documentary voice now. At Wharf 359. No, go. Let's keep moving.
Well, so he goes. It's this this external pressure that is changing the circumstances so that he does meet with his brother, and they very much have an airing of their grievances. We see that in the fight, and I think Robert's wife, I think she says sometime in that episode that like, well, you know, you needed to get that out of your system, like you needed to air all those emotions out. You needed to get that stuff out in the open so you could actually do something about it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at all the Zahir here says Worf and Nikolai on Baral too.
Yes.
It's like
yes.
Worf. Well, we said Worf and everybody.
Worf and everybody. Like again, when it comes to Worf and reconciliation, I point you back to this image. There's a lot of it, and it's complicated. So there's a lot of directions we can go there. Speaking of other directions, Larry, I think we need
Nathaniel,
to.
Nathaniel also says in his jumping shows, Worf and Ezri.
Yes. I saw that comment. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah.
My gosh,
and relate, which I never thought about doing, but he relates it to divorced couples trying to find a way to to deal with each other afterwards, especially if they have kids.
I feel like the whole time we're talking about Worf, I just need to leave this image up because it kind of like.
I never thought about Worf aside from the original Gerard Duras family conspiracy. I never thought about it being conspiratorial, but okay. Not
conspiratorial, but complicated. The relationships here are very complicated when it comes to Worf. Yeah.
Wait, that's the Klingon forehead thingy. That's what that is. It's, okay.
That's complicated too.
That is.
Yeah, Worf and Ezri is another good example, and this one gets really complicated. We talked about in a past episode, I forget which one, about my complicated feelings towards Ezri and how I don't think she should have been stationed at Deep Space Nine after being joined. And then you had a great some great responses to that have now helped me to rethink things. Like it is time of war. Benjamin Sisko can pull a few strings so that he has the people he trusts most in command with him. It makes sense to me. I'm with you. And
I'm really glad we were able to do that for you, Ali, because they're not going to reshoot this season.
I have a petition, Larry. Please sign my petition. Remake season 7 of Deep Space Nine.
Now, we'd had Twitter in the 90s. I don't know, but anyway.
Oh my gosh, no. The arc there for Ezri and Worf, I think, is a good one. They're able to again get the emotions out there and actually have the discussion they need to have and come to a place of understanding so that they can both move forward in different directions. That's a really great.
Well, speaking moving forward, here's Tim saying the failed reconciliation between Data and Lore. Speaking
Data
of
and Lore, yes, yeah. I saw Tim's comment too. That was a really good one. Do you think, Larry, reconciliation is possible between the two of them?
Well, when you get into what AI, we have to say AI now. Android programming.
Synths, is that what they're
Yeah. Well, since you say that, it's if it's baked in the cake, if it's in the DNA that's unmutable, you're talking about AI. It's a matter of programming. It's hardware or software hardwired. I don't know. It's you have to have a trauma, as in like bashing in your programming module, and you have to be rewired or something. Literally, not. I don't know. It's you just can't trust something that's built to be untrustworthy, can you? Or wasn't built to be, unless you rewire it with a personality change or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at here. Reconciliation does require some aspect of forgiveness, acceptance, and
sincerity.
Yes, and is Lore capable of those things? Like if
nope. We need some black and white in life, and we need some black and white in Star Trek, and Lore is not capable. That's
I
why he's
guess,
still in pieces
yeah, I guess the
to
question
this day.
is,
Hmm.
can lore grow beyond his programming? I think that's kind of what we
Well,
get
if your
to.
programming is self-sabotaging,
Yeah, I think it might require an external force in the same way as like a therapist would. You need someone who might be able to help Lore out with his programming. Maybe get him a new moral chip or something like that.
yeah.
Upgrade that. Larry, I want to jump into Deep Space Nine a little bit.
Oh yeah. Well, we put our toe in the water there with Esri, so yeah.
We did, and that kind of got me thinking. Let's talk a little bit more about reconciliation
So
specifically.
I pulled that because I thought
Yeah,
about the whole reconciliation. We didn't see it to the fruition, but we saw the beginnings personified personally there between Kira and Ducat kind of they don't reconcile, but they can stand to be in the same room with each other. But
yeah,
those two actually not had to reconcile because they suddenly a traumatic thing happened. The
yes,
Dominion is now abusing Cardassia,
yeah,
right? And it's Cardassia, hey, karma guys, you could say karma, but in the moment, and they needed what that opening was as a war strategy. But those two individuals had to learn to get along, just as the Cardassians had to swallow their pride and get along with Bajor. But also, Damar kills his Rusat. He kills one of his oldest friends because he can't adjust. And I mean, that's pretty literal and black and white and hardcore stone cold. But he actually ends somebody else who can't reconcile, at least for the time being. Does it make
I
sense? I mean,
yeah, it totally makes sense. I think
we make sacrifices sometimes to have a reconciliation happen that maybe our heart isn't even in it, but we know intellectually we have to do it. Does that?
yeah, yeah. I'm right there with you, Larry. I when it comes to reconciliation, I think the strongest storyline we actually have for this in Star Trek is the storyline of the Bajorans and the Cardassians, largely, and then this storyline in particular
Mhm.
of Kira and Damar is such a fantastic example of that, and we see it as an arc in.
Yeah,
Okay.
and not only that, but he had killed Tora Jal. He had killed
Yes.
Jal,
Yes.
her
Yes.
friend, much less an innocent young girl who'd barely started her life, and was by species and was okay.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty close match to historical reconciliations that we have
Mhm.
seen gone well and gone poorly. Um, you know what? The events of World War I and what happened to Germany set the stage for the rise of Hitler
Right.
and World
Where
War
there
II.
wasn't a social reconciliation,
There was not a yes, yes.
externally and internally both,
Yeah,
and
the blame on Germany and the lack of reconciliation there, as well as the lack of social reconciliation, as well as economic. It just Germany was completely destroyed, and unfortunately, a very evil man rose up and took advantage of that. And then reconciliation after World War II.
Mhm.
And Germany's very different response there in terms of really reminding themselves constantly of what happened in that country and the actions that they took. Reconciliation in South Africa after the fall of apartheid. And unfortunately, the lack of reconciliation between the Palestinian and Israeli people right now. There are examples in history that I think are the closest parallel here that we have is what's happened to the Bajoran people and the Cardassian people.
Hmm.
Um,
If only I could think of some cultural reconciliations, say in our own country here, that have not happened that ought to happen.
well, this was the other reason
I
why we
can think
wanted.
of two.
This was the other reason why we wanted to talk about this is we're in a big point of transition right now, in the United States, and we're not going to know the whole makeup of. We still have one election left to settle in this country with in Georgia, and there's going to be a transition in power, and it's going to be complicated, and there are hurt people on all sides of it's going to be really messy, Larry. So, in what ways can we, as a country, reconcile in the United States? But also there are a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of people who are on different sides of a lot of these issues. So reconciliation is something we're all going to
In the
be,
middle of a pandemic.
yeah, in the middle of
Sure.
a pandemic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We haven't even talked about reconciliation more globally with the pandemic, but one of the things China's been doing, like the coronavirus had its origin in China, and a lot of people have been looking at China's response as vaccine diplomacy. That China is really doing what is trying to do what it can in terms of getting their vaccine out to countries that might not otherwise have the economic means
So it's a
be
little
able to
bit
create
like
their
Discovery's dilithium diplomacy in the 32nd century.
own. Yes, this is what is so bizarre to me, Larry. They filmed this show so long ago. This season, they filmed this
Like,
season so long ago.
yeah, like 1997 or something. Yeah.
1997, more like 2019. They filmed this
Yeah.
in 2019, and
Right. Almost
they're
as far
so.
back.
Yeah, if you want to talk about social comment, in these modern times it's so far back. But if you want to talk about social commentary, there are so many threads here that connect to our day.
Oh, let's do. No.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
I feel like we can get to some of this later on because I feel like we should press ahead with
Sure.
as just not to be spoil sport there, but we can totally get back to that. Zahir says Cisco reconciling his anger toward Picard Locutus.
Yes.
There's that. And Jared points out, yes, Rin, the Andorian we talked about, played by, and I'm still remembering his name because it's Noah AK on his Twitter. He's who's a huge big fanboy when he was younger. The real life husband of Mary Weissman. Odo and Loxana, Linda says, trapped in the turbo lift, reconciling their weird situation.
Yeah, that's
not galactic spanning, but
Jim says Tom Paris and his dad, Admiral Paris.
Oh yeah, we haven't gone
We
post
haven't done-
S9 yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't
Victoria
done
here
Voyager.
says Worf
Yeah.
and Alexander.
Oh my
Inside
gosh.
But
Oh
that's
my
a Worf
gosh.
to everybody, so it's covered.
Yeah, if we once again, I point you to this Worf and his relationships mapped out. There's also I saw this great one. Yeah, Tim said the strained reconciliation between Riker and his father, Kyle Riker. I don't know if they get to a reconciliation there. They play that wonderful game of what's that game? Not Parisi Squares.
Oh no, it's oh god, see, because Chris Jones did a cartoon of the two of us fighting during the OU Alabama game. Ambojitsu.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I love that moment. It's a little cheesy, but I love him. Let's see.
Oh, Zahir. Jadzia reconciling with Duran.
Yes. You're a past host.
Physically, yes.
No, that's a great one. Zahir's got a lot of great ones today. B'Elanna Torres and her mom, Miral. And also B'Elanna Torres and her dad.
Yeah, okay. Let's just jump into Voyager.
Oh.
Because I was going, well, there are all these like short-term ones, but those are the first thing in Voyager I thought of, and then I forgot to pull a picture, was because it always felt like it was so kind of by the book and on the surface, but was Tom Paris and Neelix over the cast.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like early out of the
yeah.
gate, and then they did it in a year, and it was like, and here's one of the, there were, Tom had a lot of reconciliations with everybody, and they had built into the DNA of the show him and Chakotay not getting along because of old, whatevers. But, and I guess the whole thing of the Starfleet crew and the Maquis-ish, that was, to me, that was so bungled it was so stopped, 1 week we remember it, 1 week we don't. And that was part of the Voyager problem. But yeah, these, I thought the two B'Elanna, the parental with
Yeah.
B'Elanna with her Klingonness 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Maybe that Always Sunny in Philadelphia image is just more about Klingons and Klingon
I was gonna say,
relationships.
should this be like? Should we adapt this to B'Elanna and everybody? Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously. Um, yeah, there's some great episodes here. There's also a lot of discussion going on about Star Trek Enterprise, and you and I sort of talked about the relation in our prep. We talked about the Andorians and Vulcans, but there's a lot of discussion actually happening about the Expanse and the Xindi. And some reconciliation that's occurred between the Xindi and
humanoids.
Earth. Yeah. I think that's a really good read on this. Don't we see, Larry, don't we see a Xindi species in Star Trek Discovery?
In one of the later ones, I think there's a. I'm trying to remember if it's an alternate line or if it's actual. Somebody's going to pop in and say. I was about to say I think there's a Xindi humanoid.
Yeah.
Or Xindi primate, or whatever they wound up calling them.
Yes. Yeah, I think we see one of them at some
point. The Xindi sloths. For all year long, they call them Xindi sloths, and then they let's call them Xindi arboreals. Okay. Like I still think I'm the Xindi humanoid, Xindi sloth, and yeah.
And there's another comment. This was interesting. Dan is mentioning the reconciliation between the Federation and V'ger. That's interesting. We don't talk about the motion picture enough. I have I
just talked about Beetlejuiceans and what movie?
I know, but we should be talking
about Saurians and everything. I want to see a Mazarite out there chewing out its own clothing. Yeah.
Oh, this is the one I was gonna say. This is a bit of a K3 territory, but Nathaniel mentions Mulgrew coming to terms with the treatment of Jerry.
That was going to be one of my introductory K3s that you already knew about, so I wasn't going to mention it.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't going to detail it because I was going to mention it and say, well, there's some you know about, and that's probably in modern fandom, that's probably the one that's in most people's face if they think about a reconciliation that way.
Jim has a lot of love for the Xindi arc, and maybe that's something
we
can. Hi, Jim. Maybe that's something we can dive into after Discovery is done. I think there's a lot in the Xindi arc that we can talk into.
It felt like there were like 2 Xindi around the table, so it felt like an arc.
Oh, that was a joke, right?
That was a bad joke. Yeah.
Yeah. It was maybe someone left.
Moving right along.
Page 2.
Moving right along. Okay.
Larry, I think that's kind of all the big notes that we highlighted. Should we?
You could say you could say tripping to Paul after he left the ship and had to reconcile with his feelings about that all kept going back. Some of these things that what if you have failed reconciliations?
Yes.
Somebody either just said something just came to mind about that. I was going to pull Boimler and Mariner after the first episode of Lower Decks, but then they wind up being pissed at each other. He's being snooty patooty at the end of the season arc, and we don't know where it winds up. I was just watching that the other night where he lets her ring and ring and ring on his pad and doesn't pick up, doesn't answer. Oh, Pixel Paradise, hello. Silurian lives matter. Yeah.
I was just reconciling the lack of coffee in my cup. Yeah, should we march along into the counselor's log, Larry?
I guess so. I just am trying to think. There's lots. Can we just decide on a definition? When we talk about reconciliation versus maybe some of these unfulfilled, it feels like reconciliation by definition means there was like not just a passing disagreement, but like something really deep rooted.
Yes, that's actually a great transition, Larry. Thank you for
welcome.
That. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, yeah. Good morning. Good
Yeah, I don't know
morning.
where that came from,
We've
but
talked about Star Trek the whole night through. Good morning. Good morning to you and you and you and to you. Live long and prosper. Yeah, I've got a definition for you. So, in my prep, I was kind of looking for a definition of reconciliation that I really liked, and so here's one that I found that I think kind of summarizes what's going on. This was all inspired again by these last two episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and really honing in on Unification 3, which wow, that's I don't think we have seen. Larry, this is me pretending to do a K3 in my head. I don't think
Duck.
we have seen
Okay.
a cross series play or sequel to a title from a previous series since the Naked Time and the Naked Now. Is that right?
I'm sorry. This is the beginning. You're talking about the Unification 3 throwback to TNG?
To Unification Part 1 and 2. We have Unification 1 and 2, and now Unification 3,
Unification
right?
3. And you're comparing it to Naked Now, Naked Time.
Yes. Yes.
I guess so. If you're going to start a category like that.
Yeah. I'm
So
trying
now-
to think of other...
Fine, you
know-
just gave Memory Alpha a new page. I was trying to catch up at a thread here in the chat. Yeah, I'll think about it, but off the top of my head, I think so.
Yeah, I mean we have Trials and Tribulations, but that's not really a play on the problem with tribbles.
Well, I mean, no, I would consider that in the same realm. If you're gonna,
I mean they both have tribble in the name, but
okay. Otherwise, you'd have to call all the Q episodes with Q in the title, something.
right.
Yeah.
No, this is a weird category.
Well,
it's
you're
not
coming.
K3.
You're creating the category. You get to define it.
Yeah. We're gonna call this the.
Don't let the Memory Alpha committee hash it out. Do you do it right now?
We're gonna call this the Mattu factor. The Mattu factor on this episode was quite high. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I got a definition of reconciliation here for you, Larry. So this is the one I liked, and it's most related to Unification 3. The removal of emotional barriers that are associated with threats to victim and perpetrator's identity and which sustain conflict. So, another way of thinking about it, we're taking away the things that are keeping the conflict going between these different parties. Specifically, one party that has that feels as though it's been wronged, and another party that has more power and is maybe associated with committing that wrongdoing. Now, what's interesting about the Romulans and the Vulcans is who are the victims here and who are the perpetrators? Like, who is associated as having more power? Who is associated with the wrongdoing and being victim? I'm not 100% clear. Like, it is clear in other examples.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the schism, the Romulans
let's go back to the schism, please.
The Romulans left Vulcan.
Yep.
Because the Romulans didn't want to fight. And the Romulans didn't want to fight them about not fighting. I mean, that's kind of...
And that's coming from Enterprise? That backstory?
That's theorizing over the years. No, I mean, it's like the Romulans, once they found out in Balance of Terror, oh, look, they must have had a common heritage. And then over time, that's worked out. Yeah, Enterprise...
Yeah, so we find it... So TOS, we learn that the Romulans and Vulcans are related. And the Federation is like, huh?
I'm sure Spock adds to it there. But also, what's her name? The Vulcan/Romulan terrorist behind the Sonics resonator super weapon in the hands of a telepath that's at the core of the Gambit two-part plot.
Right.
Who's trying to force, and
oh
unification.
I remember that.
Right. Yeah. So it's all there. I mean, the same set dressing is those little columny things that look like they could be a plant stand are in Vulcan scenes and they're in Romulan scenes. It's like, oh, okay, guys. No, that 3-ship invasion force that the Romulans send to Vulcan.
Right, the three ships. Right, right. Oh no, they're sending three ships. They're gonna take
They're
over the
crammed
planet.
full. They are not
Yeah.
socially distanced in there. Yeah. It's
Yeah. So we find out we learn more in TNG
they're
that
stacked agreements. We just didn't know it at the time.
right. Hey, I like that. I like that texture. We learn more in TNG, specifically in Unification and that episode you just mentioned right now, Larry. That the relationship between these two people is more fraught, and then I think the next time we learn more about it isn't until Enterprise, right? If I the episodes that really dive more into Vulcan culture. So
Right.
Vulcan, it's almost like Surak.
Sounds like a Vulcan carpet dealer or something. I don't know.
Get your best deals. Wait, no, they wouldn't. If they're Vulcan, there would be the most logical deals will be found this Saturday at at Sawrax.
Sorax Vulcan Carpet Emporium. I don't know where that came from.
Right down the road from the High Command.
Our first piece of merch is going to be a T-shirt for Sorax Vulcan Carpet Emporium. Okay. Out of everything we've ever done, that will be the first thing. I'm not even. I'm scared to look at the chat now. Okay, guys.
I love that idea.
This is what 4 hours of sleep does to you. Okay.
I know. Glenn also has got a great point. In-universe explanation. These columns prove the common ancestry between Vulcans and Romulans. Real-life explanation. Hey, let's use these props to save some money. We can make a whole other alien race here.
I believe I said that, Doctor. I'm talking to Glenn, not you, but yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a double-edged. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So, what was I doing? Yes, I'm in the counselor's log. So yeah, I like that definition a lot here, and I think you're right, Larry. I think the Vulcans went down in this cultural hegemonic kind of way towards Sawrax. Between the
That's a lot of carpet. Okay. I don't know.
Oh,
I believe the word
Larry,
you're looking for is Surak.
Surak. Thank you, Larry. The Vulcans go down this path of this
Carpet
hegemonic path where everyone is following his teachings. And I get the impression that
they were all about to kill each other.
Yes, as we learned in Enterprise.
The thing that blew me away about Enterprise, that trilogy, was that the Vulcans had nukes at that time. They had
thousands of years ago.
Limited warp ships, at least, and nuke power. That's how more advanced they were than humans, because the Romulans were able to star hop and get away.
Yeah, and sometime in that past, a group said, forget this. They left thousands of years ago, and they ended up becoming the Romulans.
Under the Raptor wing, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we didn't even talk about reconciliation within the Vulcans, but you're right, Larry. There were people who wanted there were Vulcans that wanted to follow a different path, and that's what we see in that great series in Star Trek Enterprise. So, for whatever reason, these people feel these strong emotional barriers, and they feel a sense of threat. And I think that sense of threat, I'm guessing it is less about Vulcans and Romulans as it is about Romulans and Federation. That the Vulcans' status in the Federation, founding members, their philosophy as it has become, and the Romulan philosophy, the Romulan Star Empire, the way things have played out. I think that's where, there is a common heritage, but they have come to represent very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the emotional barriers. That is the power differential. It's more the power differential between the Romulans and the Federation and the Vulcans as they exist within the Federations. I think that's where if I'm putting on the hat of Ambassador Mattu and I'm sitting there between these people, that's where I'd really open up the dialogue. This is where it comes from. And with the research on reconciliation, again, as it relates to real world reconciliation, and I think this is best seen in the beginning, the early stages of this with the Bajorans and the Cardassians. We see a lot of beginnings and we see a lot of ends. We don't see as much of the process in Star Trek, but I think the closest parallel we see for the beginning stages is Bajorans and Cardassians. We see a little middle stage with Spock and in Unification, and now we see an end stage with Unification Part 3. But what do the victims need? The victims need to have some sense of power restored, to have some sense of self action, to be able to control their own destinies a bit. That's what the victims need. They need power to be restored. What do the perpetrators need? The people who have committed these acts, like the Bajorans, need to be empowered. And what do the Cardassians need for reconciliation here? Well, they need to be seen as coming back to some type of moral authority. They need acceptance of. They need to accept what they have done, and they need some readmission into the moral community. There's a great comment here that just.
I was going to say, do you factor in the trauma that billions of Cardassians have now been slaughtered? You could almost say the Bajorans are going to stand there and do the thing at them, but.
You need, more.
Whether that's helpful or harmful, you could perpetuate it, or you could use that.
Right.
Basically,
exactly.
extend the Kira Damar dynamic there and say, here's our new situation. But that began just with the outcomes in play, not even the fact that they'd been so wounded eventually. But.
Well, and Larry, there's many examples in history where that is exactly what's occurred, where one group that were the victims have regained power, and they've perpetuated that cycle of violence. So it's a very precarious moment in these moments in history, and in that moment as well, Kira could have definitely said, "No, I'm not going to help you. You will perish. This will happen to Cardassians. What happened to you is exactly what happened to us. Now you're going to know what it feels like." But she sort of does see, she has a strong moral compass and sees that, like, for the sake of the Alpha Quadrant, I need to put that ahead over this. Nathaniel has a really great question.
A lot like her debate with Harris Yulin's character, I've gone blank, in Duet.
Yes. Oh, fantastic episode. One of DS9's best. Nathaniel asks, how much does reconciliation require truth-telling, or does it require some form of acceptance or forgetting? Nathaniel, I would say it absolutely relies on truth-telling.
Otherwise, you're just papering over.
Yes. Yeah. And there has to be that moral coming together. The perpetrators, in order to come back apart, to be a part of the moral community again, you have to own the truth of what's happened. This is why it's been so critical for Germany at post World War II to have so many reminders of the Holocaust and the horrible actions that the German people took. You have to tell the truth. It's one of the only ways in which the perpetrators can be returned to good moral standing. And that's why there's always truth, and in a lot of these reconciliation movements, there's always truth-telling. A truth and reconciliation committee is usually what's formed.
Yeah. Right. I was going to say, and some would say that until in America, in the United States, we have that kind of a reconciliation between, just to be blunt about it, the white community and the black community over slavery, and the white community and the native community over what do they call it? Ethnic cleansing. Now, yes, it was 200 and 300 and 400 years ago
the
But
genocide of the
yeah, yeah, the
Native
yeah,
Americans,
yeah.
and
Whether
absolutely.
accidentally or on
Well,
purpose. I mean,
well, and
oh,
we
sorry,
could.
smallpox. Okay.
And that could be a very long discussion that we have is has that reconciliation ever happened? And I would argue it hasn't really
It's like,
happened
here's a
in the
crumb.
United States.
Here's a
Yeah,
crumb.
yeah.
Here's a crumb. Here's a
We
crumb.
haven't really, have the victims of slavery and of the genocide of
I mean,
Native
it's
Americans.
still aside from the whole like thing like statues, forget that. It
Yeah,
still pisses some people off to say, slaves built the U.S. Capitol building.
we we've
No.
got we've
Yeah.
got a very long way to go to really get to reconciliation in this country. So we have a long way to go. I mean, just in the truth telling in itself in history. I mean, we had this last week with Thanksgiving, Larry. Thanksgiving is a very
Hmm.
painful time for Native Americans because it celebrates in many ways a false myth of what happened, and it represents the beginning of the genocide of Native Americans. So yeah, to kind of summarize it, perpetrators need to find some type of moral acceptance and ownership of what happened, and those who have been disadvantaged need to be empowered. Both of those things need to happen for a true reconciliation to occur, and that has happened now with the Vulcans and the Romulans, and I hope we get to learn more about that. Speaking about learning more, let's transition to our K3 factor. This
Oh,
is our
it's K3
deep
time.
dive. It's
Okay.
K3 time, folks. It's favorite time of week when we get to learn a little bit more, a deep dive into Star Trek canon with Dr. Trek.
Oh, wow, that was a setup. Wow. No, I mentioned earlier, the K3 guys, by the way, for you new folk, is most of our show here is about geeking out with Star Trek and through a mental health lens. And as you just heard, Dr. Ali brings all that. So this is my little corner to try to take our theme and bust out beyond the film and give you a deep dive the way we do everything in Trekland and especially around Portal 47. But so going behind scenes to the real world of Star Trek, the real life world of Star Trek, I was this whole reconciliation theme. And again, we said earlier, one of the biggest ones that's most mindful, I think, most public, was the recent reconciliation between Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan, which was mainly on Kate's shoulders and somewhat, it was unfortunate. I remember at the time, people just kind of, it's kind of like when the black sheep of the family come back at Thanksgiving, kind of, and everybody gets along for the sake of it. In fact, people got along for the sake of the cameras very well because audience went 20 years and had no idea this was going on. But Kate was being very human and feeling like she was the first woman to lead a Star Trek and the lead of any show. And midway through, the course correction is to bring in the sexy new actress to goose the ratings. So she took that hard. She took it, with some jealousy, with some anger, with some, well, we'll show her. But she was too professional to sabotage the show over it. So it was just existed in, under breath mutterings and tension on set, and everybody got through things. And thankfully, yes, years and distance and all of that, and the thing coming out beyond the little inner circle of the actor circle and the old stage crew, and they've reconciled publicly. And I think it's a very sincere. I mean, they're both getting on in years, but they're both still active. And I think it was the win-win fell out, and there was no longer any ego to bruise.
And we're gonna see more of each character. Probably we've seen more of Seven of Nine in Star Trek
Well, we'll
Picard, and we're gonna see a
Janeway.
lot more Janeway in Star Trek. I was gonna say Star Trek Rogue Squadron. That's not it. Star Trek Prodigy. There we go. Thank you. Star Trek late 1990s internet ISP. Star Trek Prodigy.
And that wasn't. I mean, you could talk about Shatner, Nimoy in the 60s getting miffed about their roles on the show when Spock ballooned up into a bigger character than he was supposed to be, and all that. You could talk about
which we've talked about that in past
Yes, and
K3s.
Nichelle Nichols talking about how
Yes.
She was told later that she got more fan mail than Shatner and Nimoy did, but the studio couldn't let that out, so they, that could be
What?
Nichelle talking now. Yeah, that could be
Wow.
Nichelle talking later on, and having fun with this. Anyway, but we know about the Shatner Nimoy thing, and sadly, we know about how that quickly went away. But then the years before Nimoy died, that they were estranged
Yeah.
again. So,
Yeah.
one thing we haven't talked about is reconciliations that don't last, even that
Yeah.
come together
Yeah.
and go away. But here's the one I want to give, and you could talk about Gates McFadden and the production company, although it was really Maury Hurley. And then when the source of an issue leaves a agency or a group, then you can have a reconciliation when you take the rock out of the shoe.
Can I just interject for a moment and say, Larry
Yes.
always sends me the image. Larry puts all the images together for us, and he always sends me these images. And whenever I see the K3 images, I'm like, what the heck is Larry going to talk about? Which is exactly what I'm thinking right now, Larry. So I have no idea at all what direction this is going. I'm very excited to see this.
So after the Maury Hurley term, right? Maury
Oh,
Hurley
and Charlotte also says a good example is Spock and Sarek's reconciliation didn't last either. Great example of that.
There you go. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That Star Trek 3 scene was not the end of it.
Yeah.
They had, if it wasn't for Picard being a conduit, they wouldn't have had that
Yeah.
poignant last long.
I like that example of Picard being a conduit. His brain was quite literally
My
the
mind to
conduit.
your
Yeah.
mind to your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was
so
basically a USB jump drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the longest K3 ever. So somebody says, "Oh no way. They've been far worse than this." No, so here's my surprise. So one of the things that's now in the gloss of the years going by, when Maury Hurley left, we had a short. Michael Wagner was there for 5 seconds as the showrunner, did a script, and then left. And people would like. It's almost like those jobs where you can't leave your job until you get somebody to take it for you.
Sure. Yeah.
That's literally what they were doing. So Maury Hurley gets Michael Wagner to come in. He's showrunner for about 5 seconds or 5 weeks, whatever. And then he's leaving. He writes a script. They do and then he gets Michael Piller to come in and showrun. And so Michael is starting late in the year. He used to talk about how they were riding the rims. We make fun of I know we were laughing about titles. He makes fun of the titles on Next Gen. The Hunted, the High Ground, the Vengeance Factor, or the Defector, all those. And it's insane. And the poor writing staff has had to jerk around from the ones that were there from the way they did things the first year and a half, 2 years, even with the chaos on the bridge factor going on. Michael was a great writer and a great organizer of people, but he was a little Sheldonish. So people, it was kind of like, get the thing done. And Ron Moore was the baby they bought his spec script. And he was new, so he was kind of like the babe in the woods. Everybody else was an experienced hand. And so that first picture, where they're all in their tuxes. So here's the basic third season writing staff that Michael inherited. So there's Ira Bear in the second from left, and Baby Ron, and Melinda down there. And then on the ends, that's Ricky Manning and Hans Beimler. And they were a writing partnership. I think they're at the Emmys here or something. Anyway, by the end of the season, there's the next picture you can put up there. Yeah. Everybody, yes, the one where they're all out in their shirts. So there's Michael Piller. This is out on the lot. There's Ira again. There's Baby Ron. This is all still the third season, because by the end of that third season, which then halfway through, it's like Coyote getting up on top of his rocket shoes finally. Sins the Father and the Offspring and yes, Yesterday's Enterprise, which was a shit show to produce. They were amazed that it came off the way it did. It was a horrible process of writing. It was a cluster F to do it, because they each took an act. They had to redo the schedule, and they wrote it over Thanksgiving, and everybody took an act, and Michael put them together and didn't take credit because there was too many hands and names, and the guild wouldn't do 5 names on a script. All this stuff. It was insane. And then you wind up with Best of Both Worlds, and Michael wondering if he's going to take the job again, because it was so exhausting and draining. But part of the exhaustion was all of those writers, none of them came back except Baby Ron. They
Wow.
totally that's why Jerry Taylor came to the show for a season. That's why a lot of things happen, including Ira, who famously now, right, is the guy of DS9 after Michael created it and started the first year or two. So the point here is all those writers, and you hear that a lot. Writers leave the show pissed off about something, or they've been burned, whatever, right? It happens in all the series, and sometimes that's just a process of they throw people on the wall and see who sticks as far as writers go, and that's the one that's most exposed. That happens creatively on stage too, in the designers and things, but the writers are the core of the whole show.
Yeah.
And especially in the first year, and especially if there's a lot of pressure like a Star Trek has, the first year can be a merry-go-round of people. Enterprise was that way. Next Generation was that way. Discovery was seasons. That way. Yeah. Now that you mention it. So the point here is that all of those writers, it was like most of them were fans too. And they loved the show, but it was just too much of a ringer, and they left, with the exception of Baby Ron, who was all wide-eyed with newness. And then when DS9 came along, Michael, who was old best friends with Ira, they used to go to Dodger games, and they'd been together in New York. They were best buds. Michael let him read his insurrection script, and Ira very famously came in and said, "Mikey, Mikey, Mikey." Like, there's a lot of problems with this script. He could not, he finally went back and said, "Okay, we're starting a new show. Ira, I want you to come on, and then in a couple of years, I want you to take over and be showrunner." And Ira's like, oh no, no way, no way, no way. And he says, "No, look, everything about Next Generation that you didn't like, for one thing, Gene is dead." No, not that. Aging Gene, having many strokes and being spastic is gone. That's not a factor. But mainly, everything we know about DS9. It's dark. It's gritty. It's not pretty. You get to you can break some of the barriers because
that's how they advertised it. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It's dark. It's gritty. It's not pretty. You're gonna hate it right now, but in 20 years.
It doesn't go anywhere. Oh wait,
it doesn't go anywhere. They won't go to warp.
The bottom line is he was able to reconcile Ira to the idea of working on a beloved Star Trek again, even as this original series guy had been so burned by his experience, and Ira would write the Lawaks. No, Ira did one or two more shows as a piece, but as a freelancer, not being on staff. So he reconciled Ira to DS9. And then later on, he reconciled Hans Beimler to come back and write after Robert Wolf left, and he took his shot. But Ricky Manning, who they had been partners, did not go there. So, and Melinda came back and helped a little bit with the restoration of Measure of the Man. But that's a Venn diagram there of different people who reacted to the trauma at a work situation, even a creative one, and they all had different reactions. And then some of them could be reconciled to come back to a new iteration, a new chapter. Some of them took longer than others, and some never wanted to go back. And I thought maybe that was a good spectrum view of reconciliation. Does that make sense? Did that work?
Yeah, I think it does. And what I was thinking of,
Michael Piller's persuasive ability that got Ira everything you know about DS9 and what Ira brought to it, and the people he did and the way he did it. That all hinged on Michael Piller getting him to come back. I mean, DS9 could have evolved a different way under somebody else, and it might have been just as awesome. But the DS9 we know totally rested by Michael being able to convince Ira to come back from being so burned, and to be able to reconcile Ira to the idea of enjoying and being creative with Star Trek again.
The thought that was now going through my head during this K3 factor, Larry, was this right here. If I can...
Looking for the conspiracy map again, right? No.
I'm trying to pull up. There we go. There we are. I got the right one this time.
We had it before. We'd had it in a past show, yeah.
We've had it in a past show. I think this image
now
really well represents this K3 factor. Yeah, no, I mean, that's...
Did I don't know if I blew your mind away, but did I get you?
You got me. I mean, I did not know. Again, like I did not know any of this. And the behind the scenes, the Kate Mulgrew stuff that you introduced. Yeah,
Right.
that's definitely something I've known, but not.
That's why I only spent 5 minutes on that and nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah. No, this was new to me. Um,
Well, while the iron is hot, can you put up
yeah.
the next
Oh
K3? I was
yes,
gonna
yes, yes,
say,
yes.
guys, if you
Let's
really
strike.
enjoy
Well,
that kind of
yeah.
thing, that's what we do in all. That's what I do in everything Trekland. That's what I especially do with the Portales in Portal 47, which is my business. And this Wednesday is the time. Finally, after two postponements due to his schedule, this Wednesday is our fifth anniversary open house. I do an open house. We throw open the doors every year. I have a even more mega guest than usual, and often the point of Portal 47 is to get all these voices and insights and stories that you don't hear anywhere else usually. So yeah, so this Wednesday, as in like 5 days, whatever, is our open house fifth anniversary with David Carson, who directed Generations, directed the DS9 pilot, directed yesterday's Enterprise, and 6 or 7 other ones. We'll have some door prizes. We'll have a mini roundtable open mic night a little bit beforehand and after. So everybody, if you're interested, if you like what I do, what I'm bringing to this, my perspective on things, that's what we do every month in the portal with a whole rack of features. It's the open house is free. Just go over to LarryNemecek.com and click on the link and just register for your seat. And so I know who's there when we do the drawings. And I'd love to see everybody over at. I do that once a year, so usually in the fall. A little delayed this year because David Carson is working with another formerly linked Star Trek actor on a new movie. And
Uh,
anyways, he just blew up. It blew up for him, so we had to keep rescheduling until he could get.
Larry, a little request for door prizes. Scott mentioned he about having a Hallmark Star Trek ornament of Larry and Ali, and then Charlotte said, "Dang, Scott, now I want a Larry and Ali ornament." And Charlotte, I probably would be holding a mug and my coffee. I think that would be a great.
I keep meaning to get a nice mug like yours, but my clear pint glass with the Diet
It's
Coke.
it's trademark. It's no it goes well. It goes well. Or you could have singing ornament, Larry and Ollie. We could be doing our dog and
You could
pony
have
show.
removable shirts where we're wearing our different things and T-shirts, or we could both be wearing the Sarax Vulcan Carpet Emporium shirt, which hasn't been designed yet. Anyway, hope you
Oh my
enjoyed that,
gosh.
Kate. So anyway, I hope a lot of you can join us on Wednesday night. It's at 7 Pacific, so that gets the American time zones.
The website, Larry, that folks can go to.
Just go to LarryNemecek.com, and there's a big button there to click on and get the place where you can sign up, and then you get sent the location and all that. It'll be a glorified Zoom meeting. Yeah.
So let's get to
Oh my
the
God. Away mission.
let's go to the away mission, and I was thinking about this, Larry. Like, what's one thing that people can take from this week's episode and maybe apply it to their own lives? Well, reconciliation is hard. It is hard to do this. It's a complicated process.
Israelis, Palestinians, what's the big deal?
Yeah, how do we
So that's
easily
the
solve this
situation.
in 2 minutes? How do we solve that conflict? No, we in a previous episode we
We
had
did a
a
full 60 in streaming. 60.
we had a previous episode about negotiating conflict, and I talked a lot about how to deal with intractable conflict, and sometimes the best way to deal with it is by not focusing on the things you have conflict on and avoiding that conflict if it's intractable conflict. So I don't want to retread familiar territory, but one of the things that I realized that I haven't talked about much on this show is forgiveness. We haven't talked about that. And forgiveness is a different concept than reconciliation. Forgiveness is often required for some reconciliation to happen. But you can have forgiveness and no reconciliation. So it's in that Venn diagram. I feel like I need to do if I want to talk about forgiveness and reconciliation, I would need to do one of these as well, of kind of talking about all these different relationships here. I know, yeah. So it's Worf, it's the Klingons, it's Belanda Taurus, and it's actually behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. This week's concept is really complicated. What we're talking about is really complicated here, but a few things I want to outline for forgiveness, because I think this is something there's probably all of us might be struggling with forgiveness as it relates to someone else, or it might relate to forgiveness of ourselves. We all might need to forgive ourselves for things that have happened, especially during this year. I mean, I can think of many times when I could have been a better friend or a better family member, or I had a hard day and I ended up yelling at my daughter, or there's so many things that we need to find a way to gain forgiveness. As Karen says right now, life is complicated. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that one. So a few things that are involved in forgiveness. Number one is you have to find some way of expressing emotionally what's going on for you. When it comes to finding ways of forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else, you have to be able to express what's been going on. It doesn't necessarily, like Larry, if I had wronged you, for you to forgive me, you don't necessarily need to express those emotions to me. Maybe you just express them to yourself. Maybe that's from journaling or some kind of art that you're creating, or expressing those to another person. Like maybe you can't always express that to whoever wronged you, but you do need to find some way to get those things out of your head and out here. So that's number one. Number two is some exploration of why this occurred. Why, whatever the event that you're struggling with, why it occurred. And sometimes the explanation might come to life is just random and sometimes things happen. Maybe that's the explanation you get to, but there has to be some kind of exploration of why did this happen. And then we have to find some ways of regaining a sense of safety. And if a family member has wronged you, maybe that rebuilding safety is you have new boundaries that you establish and you create some limitations between seeing you and the other person. Maybe if you've been wronged and you feel emotionally unsafe, you learn new ways of dealing with those emotions so that you feel more safe in the situations you're in. And the last part of it is of acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. Acceptance means you're letting go of the pain that you've experienced. You're letting go of the conflict, so you're no longer in pain. So that's really what it comes to for forgiveness, is finding some way of expressing the emotions of what you've gone through, some understanding of why this occurred, some rebuilding of safety, and some acceptance. So the away mission for this week, there's one of our lifers was taking the last away mission and turning into a journal entry that they were working on for that week, which I think is awesome. If you want to work on this week, think about some way in which you might need to forgive yourself or forgive someone else, and think about where you are on this journey. Is the point that you're at, you need to express this? Is the point that you're at, you're trying to understand what happened? Is the point that you're at, you need to rebuild some safety? Or is the point that you're at, you need to let go of this conflict a little bit so you can find some peace? I don't know. You can let us know in the Facebook group as the week goes along. But that's kind of your quick
the Facebook page.
Way.
Everybody.
Yeah, right here. Right here, folks, facebook.com/groups/LifeSupportLive. We'd love to hear about how you're doing this week's away mission. So that's forgiveness in a nutshell, Larry. We could do a whole episode on that, and maybe we will at some point. But that's the nutshell.
I'm so far behind in the chat here. Yeah, Haley.
Speaking of chat, let's get to some of those comments before.
So much.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Jared says he does not want the removable shirts version of the ornament. Jared, that's trust me, that is fine with me. That is
Jared Jared was upset with us because we didn't recognize the fact that earlier in the chat that he had apparently been named for Gerard, that it was not a forgotten name, that it lives again through him. So,
yeah.
yeah. Let's see. I'm backtracking now.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Dan just asked a question that is coming hot on the heels of this of the forgiveness one. What if you're routinely wronged again and again and don't know why, and you're the only person who would like to mend fences? You know, that's a really great question, Dan. Sometimes this is often true of people who have died who might have wronged you, and there's no way you can have that conversation with them. And this might be true of people who have now there is some type of either emotional or physical distance, and you can't have those conversations, or someone might not be willing to talk to you about it for a variety of reasons. It's hard. It's hard to have reconciliation. It's hard to have forgiveness in those moments. It's a long process, and if there is someone who you can talk to and really kind of examine all the different ways, someone who has a little bit more distance from the situation that you have perhaps experienced, and perhaps a little bit more wisdom too. So we talked in a previous episode about wisdom. Wisdom isn't necessarily about age, but it is about being able to understand, being able to share, being able to take knowledge and make it very useful for you. So finding someone who might have a little bit distance from the situation and a little bit wisdom, who might be able to help you go on this journey of trying to learn, trying to understand, of trying to find forgiveness and trying to reconcile in your own life. That's really the process. It's not easy. It's hard. For some people, that person might be a therapist. For some people, that might be a spiritual guide. For some people, that might be an older friend or family member. But it's not easy to do.
Oh, you're back to me. I'm sorry.
I'm back
just
to me.
like,
I mean,
so
I'm back
threads.
to you.
Toss that back to me. Yeah. People were saying, was there ever any familial relationship in Star Trek that didn't need some reconciliation at some point?
Oh, that's a cool question.
And I guess Jared asked that. And then Nathaniel said, I don't think Cisco Jake ever needed reconciliation. They
or
had some
Cisco
bumps,
and his dad. Or Cisco and his dad. Like, he wouldn't come to Deep Space Nine, but they had a good relationship. Yeah, I think the Cisco's qualify for that. And also, like, it's good drama. It's good TV drama.
Well, yeah.
And also, you know, has there ever been any family that doesn't need reconciliation?
Right.
I mean, I don't think those kind of families
Barbie
exist.
and Ken need reconciliation. I mean, you could be the most plastic of people in that.
Plastic of people. Oh my gosh. Oh, Tim says I can picture Dr. Ellie doing a voiceover work on a commercial. What would I sell? I don't know. Larry, I get all sorts of weird inquiries for sponsorships of my YouTube videos. You don't want to know the kind of companies that reach out to me. It's let's just say a lot of cannabis related products for some reason want
it's a booming industry. They've got cash to burn. They want to get out to the folks.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Glenn. I guess Snooty Patootie, when Glenn thinks I should copyright Snooty Patootie.
Charlotte says Ben Cisco equals Space Dad.
Space
And
Dad.
I couldn't agree with you more. The Ciscos are just such a wonderful family. And Avery Brooks mentioned that in terms of a K3 factor, that one of the reasons why he took the role is he really wanted to have to show a black family in the future that is a positive role model for everyone. A father and son who have this loving, affectionate, supportive relationship, and I think that's really the heart of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here's
Scott
one.
says I should sell
Just some
coffee. That's a good
threads.
idea, Scott. Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just totally threads here from the chat. Dan says reconciliation between the Horta and the miners on Jaina 6, even though
Oh
the
yeah.
miners were the invaders. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
one.
Aquatarg
TOS has a
on
lot of that.
Twitch. Yeah, Aquatarg on Twitch. Aquatarg on Twitch. I'm not sure who that is. It's one of you regulars went to Twitch. We were back in the thing about titles changing one word or something. Where no one has gone before, where no man has gone before.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
updates it, but it is two different titles, and yeah. I mean, all the mirror shows have a mirror thing, but that's like
yeah. Someone mentioned forgive me, folks, I can't remember who said this, but reconciliation between in the mirror universe between the Terrans and who do they in mirror
the Klingon or the is it Klingon Cardassians? Yeah.
well, the Klingons and Cardassians, they combine forces, but the reason they rise to power is because the Terrans take a very different direction after Mirror.
Right.
What did the Terrans do after Mirror? They
the Terran rebellion against the Klingon Cardassian Empire.
Before that, the effects of Spock in Mirror,
right,
in the Mirror Universe timeline,
led to the eruption of the dissolution of the Mirror Universe, which is
and what did they do
recently on Discovery? Yes.
Yeah, and what did they do? What did they do differently? The Terran Empire.
They just get good, but then they get weak, and then they're picked off by all the other vulture empires around them.
Right. There's
it
no
wasn't
reconciliation.
Really spelled out, but it just broad strokes. Yeah.
Right.
Phil Barnes, Aminiar and Vendikar. The computer war planets.
Right. That's what I was.
Yeah.
TOS has a lot of those kind of stories of these powers, then this, and like now they have to fix it. Yeah. Linda mentions the O'Briens. Reconciliation often does have to occur in marriages and families, and this is what a lot of marriage and family therapists do. And the O'Briens reconciling their career goals many times. A good example of reconciliation is after affairs. I don't know if we've seen a storyline in Star Trek about affairs. Have we seen anything like that, Larry? But I don't think we have.
Wow, that you would think that would.
You'd think
somebody's going to jump in here. That's an interesting.
Yeah,
I'm racing along now, trying to think.
I mean, the closest we got is O'Brien rubbing Kira's feet, giving her the massage while she's pregnant, and them being like, "Okay, this."
Then
is
they both
weird.
kind of woke up.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But reconciliation often has to happen in any relationship where the couples want to continue after something like an affair. If they're in a relationship where the expectations were monogamy, someone has been wronged, someone has broken the expectations, someone has taken those actions, and so everything we talked about with reconciliation has to play out in a relationship. And so thank you for reminding me of that, Linda, with your example with the O'Briens. There was no affair there, but they had to reconcile a lot of challenges in their marriage.
Oh, Charlotte here, as far as reconciliations, was it Remembrance? It's a Voyager episode where it was like the Nazi type culture that had quit being murderous, but they had buried their past and not come to terms with it and kept it a secret. And the one woman was keeping it alive. I think it was.
Jared's got a great one here. While you're looking it up, Larry, I love this one. Reconciliation between CBS and Paramount.
That's I said that. We talked about the Viacom divorce, and I said this wasn't a remerger, it was a reconciliation. Like after the divorced couple got back together.
Yeah, they did after about a decade or so. And I think Dan mentioned this earlier, Dan mentioned, I hope we get some reconciliation between the Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline. And I think that is coming. I think there's going to be, with CBS and Paramount on the behind the scenes, but then within canon too, we're in the 32nd century. They know a lot about timelines. And we see that they know about the mirror universe. I think they're going to... I think things are going to be canonized.
Yeah.
Well,
see, okay. There's alternate. This is a wacky, buggy thing anyway. And I've seen some people try to talk about it. The difference between an alternate universe, like the mirror universe is, like the Borg beat us. I mean, like you look at parallels and all those enterprises pop up.
I love parallels.
Okay.
I love Riker where he's like, they're Borg, they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
That's what he felt like. He was presaging directing First Contact.
Yeah.
But is there a difference between an alternate dimension that existed from the creation of the Big Bang or whatever you want to go with, that they all existed at the same time versus a timeline split off? And whether you want to get wrapped up in that or not, there's been all this talk about getting the Kelvin timeline back. Well, the mirror universe is a different quantum universe, and maybe it's the most adjacent, or maybe there's a lot of differences. But for some reason, that ion storm way back in Iosha, which I know now was preceded. We knew about the mirror universe from Enterprise for 100 years before that. But at least it's like, was it so close that was real distance proximity a thing, or could it have been like, we talk about 6 degrees of separation, because it feels like there could be a lot of the butterfly effects, like in Parallels, where you would see like one thing off. Oh, it's Ogawa, not Crusher, is the head doctor. And, oh, I'm in command, not sciences or whatever, but or ops. But there's all this, like, the mirror universe has been crossed back and forth between, and we don't know what's happening with Philippa in Discovery, but no one ever talks about reconciling the mirror universe, the Terran universe now, and Prime. But there's all this talk about we have to reconcile the Kelvin universe with. I don't know what reconcile in that case.
Yeah, I think people have. I think people have.
All these, I mean, there's the Klingon War universe from yesterday's Enterprise. There's all kinds of alternate. There's every universe that Worf walked into in parallel, bopped into in parallel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's.
But for some reason, everybody's focused on.
It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and I think even Dan says here that I agree it's coming, but I didn't say that, and so the way what we all might refer to reconciliation here and what they want might be different. The only thing I want is I'd like an acknowledgement of the Kelvin timeline and the events there in the Prime timeline. And we've had that with Star Trek Picard. They've mentioned the supernova and how it affected the Romulan people.
But the supernova happened in Prime.
The supernova happened Prime, and we see that.
But it was in the Prime time sliver.
And we see the Prime, timeline in the Kelvin timeline. I think it would be really cool to see the 32nd century Starfleet be aware of the Kelvin timeline. That's what I'm saying. Right. I think that would be really fun, a fun deed, in the same way that they're aware of the mirror universe. And I think that's an interesting point, Larry. Maybe, so if we're thinking about these different universes in more of a modern view of the multiverse, if there are these multiverses and every disruption in time creates a new parallel universe, maybe there are some of these universes that are... I know. As Tim says, timelines. There's no time for timelines. We don't have the time. Then maybe the mirror universe in distance is closer, or at least was, and now we know that they've been drifting apart, and so maybe that's why things were so similar, and you could have these navigations between the two, and now they've been kind of drifting farther apart. Speaking of drifting further apart, Larry, we are at
wow.
We're at the end of the show here, Larry.
There's a ton of things going on here, and I'm winking back at you, Dan, on what you just said a minute ago. And also, I'm a shout out to Just Genius, who appreciated us talking about the the racial reconciliations that America still needs to do. So you're very welcome, guys. I'm sorry if we didn't get to you at the very at the end there. Although the K3 factor comments, I'll catch up with it. Anyway, but yes, we do need to wrap.
So, Larry, this week, where can people find more of you? I'd love for you to mention again what's happening this week.
Yeah, everybody, please. I mean, I appreciate if you can. Obviously, we all can't. But Wednesday night, we'd love to see you all there. It's freebie. You might win something, and you'll have an hour with David Carson. When was the last time you saw or heard from David Carson after some of the major impacts he had on the Trek world? Whether you look at it as Generations, big screen, big budget, or you look at it as helping establish DS9's look and feel. So he's our guest. It's the 5th anniversary. Portal 47 is 5 years old. My baby. and I'd love for you to come there. Just go to LarryNemecek.com, click on the link, get the info, all that stuff. And I'd love to see you Wednesday. Otherwise, we do this on Saturdays. I do live support. I do Trekland Tuesdays live at 1 Pacific on Tuesdays on these exact same network channels where you're watching now, YouTube and Facebook and Twitch even. So that's on Tuesday. And then I overspoke myself on my show last Tuesday. The Trek Files from Roddenberry is going to be back not this Tuesday, but a week from Tuesday. So we're going to start our 6th season with the Trek Files in another week. So that's all going on. And then somewhere in here, I'm supposed to have life and holidays too. But anyway, a lot of big stuff coming on in Trekland. So that's what's happening here. How about you, Ali?
What's happening here is, for some reason, the sad music at the end of the show is not playing. I've tried multiple ways, and I cannot get that music to play, so I don't know. I did install an update of this software, so maybe there's
Does that mean we have to just keep going until next Saturday?
Ad infinitum. This show cannot end until
24/7.
Yeah, what's going on? I am still working on finishing that episode of The Psych Show, I promised to everyone. But I did finish filming the last episode of PBS Self-Evident. So we have 3 more episodes, I think, that are coming out. I just filmed the last one, and so we have a new episode coming out on Monday. So if you go to PBS Digital Studios, if you go to PBS, I don't know where you go. You go on the internet and you will find it. No, I'll post a link to it on our show page. And that's maybe the best place to go for everyone this week, is just go up here to facebook.com/group/life-support-live. And we'd love to stay in touch with you between now and the next week. Folks, thanks for all the love here. Larry,
Karen says Curzon Dax had the affair with the leader's wife on that planet.
Yes! There we go. And we get a whole episode about it, and that's a great episode. There's a lot of stuff at play in that episode.
And Michael Grace says Trip dodging a potential affair with Phlox's wife. One of Phlox's wives.
Yeah,
but that was modus operandi.
The Denoblians they have more open relationships.
They don't have a concept of an affair. Yeah.
Yeah, and Trip wasn't in a relationship he wasn't in a monogamous relationship with anyone. So I think that. But the Curzon one is great. Mm-hmm. All right, folks. Thank you. Thanks for all the love. Great to see you all here. And thanks for another wonderful episode, Larry.
Thank you, Ollie. Yes. Everybody out there, do well, live long and prosper. And I stole your line. Trek well, guys.
You stole my line. Trek well, everyone. Oh man, I was gonna